Getting busy? If you are, do it safe. Get yourself tested for HIV. It's safe, friendly, free, and it can save your life. Get tested week starts December 1st. So if you're doing it, do the right thing. Call 866-EXAM-HIV. That's 866-EXAM-HIV. HIV. Live with it. Get tested. Want to be free from HIV? PrEP can help. Taken daily and with other preventative measures like using protection and regular testing, it can reduce your risk of getting HIV by over 90%. Love free HIV with PrEP. Learn more at michigan.gov/HIV-STD.
All right, you guys, here we go. That's a relative of mine named Rodney Foster. You can pull him up on the internet. Y'all just put Rodney Foster and he plays a lot of jazz music. Been doing jazz music for years. Hey, little mama, I see you in there. All right, you guys, happy day, happy day. This is Positively D Discussion. You have to remember that HIV exists. You have to get tested. You have to use protection. And if you have contracted HIV, you can get on medication and you can live a better, healthier life. Today, my featured guest is André Wade. And André Wade was the Las Vegas Modern Luxury Magazine named one of 15 most influential people in Las Vegas. He's a native of Las Vegas. And André was an executive director for the gay and lesbian community in Southern Nevada. He has a bachelor's degree in psychology, a master's in public health administration. He has worked in human services for more than 20 years with nonprofits like National Alliance to End Homelessness as a program and policy analysis. André has served on several boards and communities that focus on the LGBTQ equality. I could go on and on about André Wade. André has done a lot. He's even worked as in inclusion with such as things like the Human Rights Campaign on the steering committee in Las Vegas for HRC. So I'm going to bring André Wade off and he can tell you about himself because I'm jobbling it all up right now. Okay, let me bring André on. Hi, André. How are you?
Hey, what's up, D? I love the intro.
I need glasses so bad. It's good to have you on. It's really good to have you on.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so tell everybody a little bit about André.
Oh, well, aside from a little bit that you mentioned, yeah, I'm born and raised in Vegas and, was bullied in school, basically. And that really got me to want to help others. That got me in this path of wanting to do this kind of work. And there's a point when I started doing some modeling because I thought that would give me a world moved out to LA just to kind of live life and work, and started writing and doing a little bit of acting, moved back to Vegas, but still just working the whole time on my career in health and human services. And yeah, started practicing yoga and wound up teaching yoga for a little while and doing that. But yeah, just overall, just regular kind of guy that's just trying to work and experience life and be happy and healthy.
Well, you're doing a lot here. You're doing a lot. And it's funny that you talked about you were being bullied, because when I look at you, I say, this is a handsome man. And I'm going to call you a young man. This is a handsome young man.
Thank you.
And you don't realize what people go through, when they grow up, unless they mention it to you. So that's something. That's pretty shocking to me.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, I realized it's something that a lot of us experience. It's not something that just unique to me. And my experience probably wasn't as bad as others, but, just we all have those things in our lives that just make us us and make us who we are. And so it was just something I had to power through, because, I spent by the time I was 16 or so, when I decided this is kind of the kind of work I wanted to do, I spent half my life being bullied and really feeling ostracized from others. And so it was a big deal, but I feel like I've tried to outgrow some of that and just, live a happy and healthy life.
Oh, well, it looks like you came out of that shell. You came out of that shell. So, André, you're the director of Silver State Equality.
Yes.
Talk to us a little bit about who is Silver State Equality and your position there as far as what you do.
Yeah, happy to. So Silver State Equality is a statewide LGBTQ civil rights organization here in Nevada. We are going on our third year of existence. We're actually a program of Equality California, which is the largest statewide LGBTQ civil rights organization in the nation. There's about 41 or so across the US. And so we focus on getting pro-equality candidates running for office elected, getting legislation passed, and doing some community work. So we have a C3 and a C4. So we do political work and education and advocacy work.
So how did you see yourself getting into this type of work?
Yeah. I started off just wanting to help people. So I was in health and human services. I started volunteering for HRC back in 2008. And that's the first time I got a sense of volunteering for the LGBTQ community and got more in the political realm and community realm. And it just kind of it just went from there. I just ended up, I was working in child welfare, and I got a job as director of operations at our LGBT center out here. Worked there for a couple of years, wound up being executive director for a couple of years. And once I left there, I got a call from a former assemblyman who asked me if I would be interested in something like Silver State Equality. And I was definitely interested because I love policy. And I want to get back in policy. I was doing policy work in DC at this organization called the National Alliance to End Homelessness. And so I'm able to use all these different skills and experiences with managing programs, again, the policy work, community work, even fundraising. But the political stuff is newer to me. So I'm still learning a lot in that area.
Right. So here in Nevada, this is how I met you. There's a coalition here called Nevada HIV Modernization, modernize the HIV criminalization laws here in Nevada. And André is the chair for the task force here that talk to everybody about the task force, what you do and how all this correlates together with the HIV modernization.
Sure. Yeah. So for Silver State Equality, we have a board of advisors. We're about 12 strong right now of leaders across the the state support in the work that we do. And I get support from my colleagues in California, but I just run our political and legislative efforts with our lobbyists, work with our public relations team to do public education work in the media, try to do some fundraising, and kind of just do a lot of things. But when we did work in the legislative session in 2019, our first real year of getting started with civil state equality, Senator Parks was wanting to do a bill to modernize HIV laws. And he wanted to do a big comprehensive bill, but realized that he needed a little bit more time. And so he decided to create a bill that makes this task force. And so essentially, I applied, like many others, to sit on the task force, and I was accepted. So the governor appointed us to the task force, and then the committee voted me to be chair of the task force, which I was very blessed to be able to, for people to have people's confidence. And so we've been looking at what laws need to change here in Nevada to address HIV criminalization, look at research across the country, see what's happening here so we can make sure we pass the law, but really have it based on research and science. And so it's a big, heavy lift. It's a huge effort, but we know we got a lot of support. We got your support with the coalition. And so, yeah, that's how it came about, and that's what we plan to do for the most part.
So as far as the bill, let's talk a little bit about why the bill is so important, here in Nevada. Why do you think the bill is so important?
So I'll give you like a big overview that I think is interesting. So back around 1987, there were laws, at least here in Nevada, that were starting to be on the books to address what people thought was the spread of HIV and AIDS. This is at a time when people knew very little about HIV and AIDS. Treatments were just starting to hit the market, if at all. And there's a lot of fear, homophobia, and stigma around HIV. And it was around this time, around like 92, 93, where we had these sodomy laws. And so people wanted to remove the sodomy laws. And they're kind of like, okay, if we remove the sodomy laws because of these, but we're still gonna have these gay people, these horrible, disgusting gay people that are gonna be out here transmitting these viruses like HIV. So we have to do something to address that. And so the sort of handoff, the condition was, well, we'll put up these laws on the books that will criminalize people living with HIV. So the idea was like, how do we get people off the street that are living with HIV so they don't become super spreaders? And so it was like, all right, well, if we find out that someone's transmitting HIV, we will convict them of a felony, charge them with up to $10,000, imprison them for up to 10 years, and that'll kind of solve the issue. And so we've been having these laws on the books for a couple of decades, and it's time to take them off, because we know that HIV doesn't spread that easily. There's medication to address it. We know a lot more. And so we just got to get our laws to match what we know about HIV based upon research and science. And so, yeah, it's the effort that's going on across the US.
Yeah. Murray here says, I'm not sure what that sounds. Murray says here, guys, the dirty, scary guys. That's what he said. And it's really sad, Murray, that these laws were put in effect because people didn't like gays. It's pretty sad. And it was something that I just learned, Andre, because, I talk about criminalization, and I fight for a young man that has been criminalized, but it was something that I learned because Virginia has been doing this with their laws, trying to modernize their laws. What they did, they had a modern. I did it that if you were gay, you couldn't do it.
I'm sorry, you cut out a little bit. That if you're gay,
you couldn't donate blood in Virginia.
Oh, right.
And I'm not sure if it was that way in Nevada, but I know in Virginia that was one of the things in the bill that passed, because if you were gay, you couldn't donate blood. And I don't know if they thought that because you were gay, you were gonna transfer your being gay onto somebody, or if that everyone who is gay may have HIV. You know, it's just pretty odd to me that stigma, because someone is gay, you can't donate blood. That really bothered me, because I had no clue about that one at all.
Yeah. Well, it's this idea that people who have men who have sex with men were at this like greater risk of transmitting HIV, HIV and transmitting it. And people didn't want to have that happen through blood donations. And now they're rigorous. They're a lot more rigorous when they look at blood when it's being donated. And so we don't really have those same concerns, but it was this idea that like all gay people are going to be potentially having HIV and spread it through to other people. But it's just, again, people didn't know and haven't known like how HIV spreads and what it all means.
Yep. Brian here says the laws were instituted when funding was handed down, and the government wanted statutes to have accountability, and it showed up in these laws.
Well, things were happening a little differently out here in Nevada. I'm not really sure what he's saying, but out here we were looking at what they were talking about, super spreaders as far as HIV, and then also looking at it from a sex worker standpoint. And so we have in our rural counties legal sex work. And so right now you cannot get a license to engage in sex work if you're living with HIV. However, on the books is a felony charge if you are living with HIV and you are engaged in sex work. So those who are doing sex work unlicensed or quote unquote illegally, then if they get caught, and usually it's not in the act, it's just like through solicitation or assumed solicitation, that they can get a felony conviction. Whereas if you have any other communicable disease and you are doing sex work, it's a misdemeanor. And your other offenses, is a misdemeanor or a gross misdemeanor, but it's only HIV where it's called out specifically to be a felony. But it just goes back to like this fear about HIV and this fear, and that's when it translates into blood donation and all these other areas.
Brian knows a lot about criminalization. Brian says the Ryan White Care Act is when the laws showed up. In some states, they showed up as early as 1988. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, it was around that time that they showed up in Nevada.
And so, what ways can you share with people? What ways that where people can get involved with something like this, but not have to spend a lot of time in doing this? I don't know if volunteering or anything. What ways can people get involved?
No, that's a good question, a good point, because sometimes getting involved does mean taking up a lot of your time or using a lot of your time to do the work. And so you can go like on our website, silverstateequality.org /HIV, and it should take you to the page where you can sign up to learn more. You can submit letters in support of the bill when we hear it in our legislative session, maybe as soon as this month, maybe next month. If you like work for an organization that does work around HIV or human services, and you want your organization to have like a presentation about it, HIV modernization, we can do that. But yeah, I think people want to be involved by just knowing about the issue and offering like letters of support and signing on to the letters or however. I think that's important. And then of course there's a coalition that meets about once or twice a month. People can sit on those meetings and maybe learn some things that the coalition wants to do and need help with.
But let's also talk a little bit about the Equality Act.
Yeah, the Equality Act is a federal piece of legislation that advocates have been wanting to have implemented for a few years now. And of course, through the Trump administration, that wasn't going to happen. So the Biden administration has vowed to pass it with the help of Congress. And so basically, it's like a omnibus bill, like a bill that would take care of a whole lot of equality issues for the LGBTQ community. So right now, um, the way that LGBTQ people are discriminated against in housing, healthcare, at schools for a long time, employment, depending on which state you lived in. So you had until last year employers who could fire or not hire someone simply because of their LGBTQ identity. And the Supreme Court decision, for the most part, handled that last year. But then there's still housing discrimination. Even there's discrimination in the homeless services and healthcare. And so the Equality Act would make it illegal to discriminate across the board. So it'd be throughout the United States and not just in certain states. And so it's really important that this piece of legislation is passed, and it's huge. But it would still mean that there's unfortunately a lot more work that would need to be done. It's kind of like marriage equality, where sometimes people thought like marriage equality meant that there'd be no more work that needed to be done, but that's just not the case. So yeah.
Yeah, there's work to be done, Andre. So much work. And we
Yeah.
hear it over and over. There's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, unfortunately, we always tell people that when election time comes up, we want people to vote, and a lot of people do, but it's something that happens every 2 years. So we need people to vote like every 2 years, always, always, every time it happens. We can never let our foot off the gas because we can always take a few steps back. So it's a constant effort.
Now, let's talk a little bit about Black and queer community. Now, I don't know if you want to touch base on that as far as in Las Vegas or anywhere else that you were, you know, speaking about the work or doing the work about the Black and queer community. You want to touch a little bit on that?
Yeah, being a gay Black man, for the most part, it's been a challenge to find um, people, friends in the Black gay community. Like growing up, and as I was going through my own journey, and then you just kind of find that there's not many places for us to gather. There's not much community that goes on, depending on what city you're living in, which makes it hard because people are already facing rejection, isolation, and tough times because of their identity. Black queer people have to face homophobia and transphobia from the larger world, and racism from the LGBTQ community that's usually seen as white. And so we're always trying to find our home and a sense of belonging. And there's been like efforts here and there where we've been trying to, build community. And like right now, there's a group called the Black Queer Men in Las Vegas, head up by CJ and Vince. And they are really just starting an effort to gather Black queer men socially and try to get them to act with advocacy efforts. And I think it's important because we're like a piece of the community that's not really talked about that much. And so we just need our own space so we can be visible and connect and feel and build friendships and that sort of thing. So it's really important for some of us out there.
Right, right. It's even hard in our own communities, being Black and gay. I'm not gay, so I can't really speak on it, but I just know from the friends that I have, that talk about how hard it is in the Black community and being gay. You get shunned away because you're gay, and I always say it's because the Black community is I always call it church based, and we live our lives through the Bible.
Yeah.
And so it's a struggle.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up going to church, and as I got older, my parents got more and more involved in the church. But it's really because of religion that my parents don't really accept my gay identity, and it's because of that that I don't go to church anymore. I still believe in God, I still have my faith, but I don't go to church. And the churches I do go to tend to be like really geared towards like full-on acceptance. But it's just funny how in the church they talk about the devil and turning your back on church and God and that sort of thing. But then the way that they behave makes you want to turn your back on at least the church anyway. And it's just like, it's really, I think, interesting. But, you know, a lot of people think that being gay is a white person's thing. And that is something that there's one theory that that's what came about in the days of slavery. They just saw it as there's no way that strong, black, muscular men who were seen as like property could be gay. And if they were, it was a white man's thing. So all this sort of translated and was played out in the church and just kind of kept up. And people started interpreting the Bible, saying that there's all these things that were in the Bible. And so it's just been this whole convoluted way of really just ostracizing people and keeping us out of our own community, I think.
I was trying to read something else. You said it's a typo, so I hope I can read it, Brian. He says people living with HIV/AIDS by helping many are afraid because he could make you a target of someone from your past showing up because now you are more open about your status. And racism and discrimination is just as prevalent in the LGBTQ community. So they must deal with their own racism and bias. It's not I don't know what that says, Brian. And then
Oh,
women,
kumbaya.
is that what it says? Kumbaya with
Yeah.
the LGBTQ community. So,
Yeah, no,
yeah.
it's not a kumbaya moment. I don't know what he's saying exactly about people coming up from your past. But yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of things that we need to address within the LGBTQ community that good old fashioned racism at the end of the day.
Right. This will be my last question for you, and then you can tell everybody where they can look for you, or email you, or find you if they can get a hold of you. So, if I could bring anything, our criminalization laws or the LGBTQ rights, what would it be?
So you said one thing, so I'm gonna try to keep it to one thing.
Two. Maybe that's
I guess to have more acceptance and less stigma. So like if we have more acceptance to where it wasn't a big deal that someone's gay or lesbian or bi or trans, I think that would solve a lot of issues. And if we had less stigma when it comes to HIV, where people saw it as a condition that people are just living with, like you said in your opening, that there's medication, there's treatment, like, okay, like you have HIV, you know, it's not what we thought it was. And if we can have people think about that, then it can solve for a lot of issues, I think. And so more acceptance, less stigma, so people can live like happy, healthy lives. Because life is already hard enough, and we don't need these other things to make it even harder for us.
right. So I agree. People should let people be and live their lives the way they choose, the way they need to live their life.
And that's why, that's one of, the mission of Silver State Equality is that we live in a world that's equal and just for everyone. And so we're going to do that through, in part, like changing the laws, because if we can address discrimination in our laws and address equality in our laws, it's just one piece of how we can get to more acceptance. And we've been on a long fight here in Nevada, really across the nation, about cultural competency trainings and speaking more about what it means to be LGBTQ, and even living with HIV. And so when you go to institutions like schools and the doctor and I don't know, go to your social security office, whatever it is, that these people are trained up on what it means to be LGBTQ. So there's less discrimination, less harassment. And so people can feel more comfortable accessing services and not feel discriminated against. And so like those are the sort of things that we're just trying to do with Silver State Equality.
Right. Well, you know what, Andre, thank you.
No, thank you. And I've been waiting for you to ask me on to your show. So I'm really happy and blessed that you did. So thank you very, very much.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you on. I don't know what that is. I've never heard that before the whole time I've been doing these shows. So, but I'm so glad I have you on. I appreciate you. I appreciate all the work you're doing here in Nevada, in Las Vegas. And I'm sure I'll see you soon in one of these Zoom meetings.
Yes, you will. Yes, and we got to talk some more. But in the meantime, yeah, you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, email. I'm around. But thank you, Dee. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. All right, everybody. You can find Andre on Twitter at Andre_N. That's IN_Vegas. At Andre_N_Vegas. And I'm sure, can they get a hold of you, Andre, at silverstateequality.org? Silverstateequality.org. You can get a hold of him there. So, you guys, I'm going to go ahead and put these little plugs in I like to give people information about. So, if you're looking for testing, HIV testing, STD testing, any kind of testing, go to hiv.gov, hiv.gov. You can put in your city, state, or zip code, and it'll give you all those testing areas in your site, every testing area. And if you're looking to learn a little more about HIV criminalization, you want to look at some videos about people that have been criminalized, you can go to our awesome organization called cerebralproject.org, cerebralproject.org. If you want to find out about criminalization laws in your state, you can go to the Center for HIV Line Policy.org, put in your city or state, and it'll give you those laws in your state. I want to talk real quick about an organization called Positive People Network, PPN. They're doing a lot of things for people in the community with HIV in Florida. You don't even have to be in Florida. If she sees you online, this organization, and you need help with the bill, PPN, Positive People Network, Inc. is jumping in and they getting a hold of you, and they're going to help you out with that. Also, there is a beautiful organization called Ariana Center. It's an organization for the trans community in Florida. Ariana's an awesome woman, and she does a lot for the trans community. I also have to mention U equals U. What U equals U is, if a person is living with HIV and they stay adherent to their medication, they can no longer transmit HIV to their partner. We're having healthy babies that are not born with HIV. You can learn a little more at uequalsu.org, uequalsu.org, or preventionaccess.org. So, this is Positively D discussion. You have to remember that HIV still exists. You have to get tested. You have to use protection. And if you have contracted HIV, you could get on medication and you can live a better, healthier life. I will see you guys next week. I don't know who's going to be on yet, but we'll see you next week. Everybody have a happy